Okay, I'm assuming everybody can see my screen. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining. This is the third session. So just to kind of recap, my name is Patrick Makem. I'm a senior blockchain architect for Ernst & Young. I've worked on a lot of proof of concepts over the years, like 4 or 5 years now. Done a lot of stuff, and I love Decentraland. And part one, I ranted about Decentraland, maybe a little too much, in the middle of a hurricane. In this last session, last week on Wednesday, we just kind of went over getting familiar with the components, the entities, and the systems that make up the majority of what happens in Decentraland. And this week, the third week, we are going to be going over a little bit of a more complicated scene. We're going to revisit some of the animation stuff that I think I kind of didn't get right the first time. We're going to look at the message bus, and we're going to get familiar with the ways that users are going to interact with each other. And we're also going to take a look at the Colossus servers, which are a really good way of actually like having game state on your own server. And I'll explain to you guys all as we go. But in the meantime, before we even get any of that stuff started, I want to point you guys to this GitHub repo, fbuilders NYC Decentraland developers / Decentraland workshop. I have just pushed recently this new folder called session 3. So this will have a lot of our code. It'll have our server, right? All this stuff will be set up. You can reference this in the future for any other projects where you want to add any of these types of things, but it should be a pretty good boilerplate just to start. But please, if you want to follow along, and I highly encourage you to do that, just grab this repo. Okay, so once you do that, I also wanted to kind of point out, we do have with us today Nico from the Decentraland SDK team. He's in the Zoom. I don't know if he has a chat mic privileges, but maybe we can give them to him. At any point in time, Nico, please chime in, correct the record if you want. Help me out, because I think it might get a little hairy at some point. But Nico's a fantastic developer. He's been really working hard on making a lot of these things a lot easier. They just recently did an upgrade to Decentraland 6.6.7. So we're seeing a lot of rapid development in that area. As their team grows, so do all of the features and everything. So he's also an all-around great guy. I love him. He's great. All right, so let's go to our terminal. I have, I'm using just iTerminal, right? I have 3 individual panes here, right? If you don't have something, if you open up terminal, you don't have 3 panes, but maybe you do, you can just right click and do split pane horizontally. It'll open up a new one. Okay, so I just have this just because I'm bounced between a lot of things. I do find this thing pretty easy. So navigate to your session 3. So if you have the repo, you just do cd session 3, right? And it will show you your new session, or like the directory you're in. So in here we have our, let me do ln so it's a little bit better. We have a couple directories, right? This is, we have our images, we have our models, node modules, right? Server, sounds, source. What we want to do to start is we want to go into the server. So cd server. Okay. Now this is the Colossus server that we'll be using later, but we're going to turn it on together right now. If there's any errors or issues, just put it in the chat and I will hopefully be able to field those. But you should do npm install while you're in this directory. So you don't probably have the packages unless you ran ahead, which I would appreciate. I love it. So just do npm install. When it's done with that, we're just going to run npm run start. And it shouldn't take any time whatsoever. This is a Colossus web server, and we'll get to that in a little bit, but I want you guys to have all this stuff up because it's important. Secondly, while this is still running, we want to now we're in the session 3. Now this is just a regular Decentraland project, right? It does have the server, but you know, it's not going to get compiled, don't worry. We're going to do DCL start. I'm going to show you guys what I kind of just whipped together in a little while. For those of you that are familiar with the awesome repository, the Decentraland awesome repository, these are all the assets for the beer dispenser game. So, right, okay, cool. So if you are playing along, you should see this. You should start and you have a mug in your hand, right? So it's not any real different from the beer dispenser repository, except I did restructure it quite a bit. I don't know if that was a good idea. I guess we'll find out. When you are holding the glass, you can press F to put it down on one of these things. You can pick it up again, put it down, pick it up, put it down. When you want to pour this specific type of beer, you hover over the tap and you hit E. Right? And then you could come here and you could pick it up and you can walk around with it. And then after a second or two, you can drink it by hitting E. I have my sounds turned off, but there's a lot of noises that happen along with it that are kind of fun sometimes. So you can also go and hit F to put it down somewhere, and then you can pick it up, put it down, pick it up, put it down. Okay. So this is essentially the, let me see, Decentraland, awesome. And I really restructured this thing quite a lot, because in a lot of these repositories, there's a problem of portability. Sometimes when we dig through these repositories, the code is a little bit over the place. Some of the projects are really old, so some of the ways that they're implemented are a little bit different. There's no real standards and stuff. And as we try to strive as a community of developers, we want to try to set some standards. So I kind of revisited it, the code, and I tried to structure it for like how I personally think that it should be structured to make it a little bit easier. So I could, theoretically, I have a plot of land where I have a bar. I would like to be able to grab the code that I've created and with very little effort, just port it over into my virtual bar that I have. And I might even want to abstract away some of the stuff to allow for other things. And we'll get to those in a little bit of time. Let's just see where it is. It is, I know I passed it. I was too busy rambling. Here's a bar, let's see, beer. Yep, there, just type in beer, beer. So this is the repository. You can also pull this down independently. So you can see that there's really no structural change in terms of the models and everything. But before we get into the actual code, I want to actually look at some of these models because we're going to be dealing with them. And it's important to familiarize yourself with what's actually happening. So let me just go to, this is the models directory. These are all, you have all of these. This is all in the repository when you pull it down. I'm going to pull down one thing. Let's see, beer dispenser. I'm going to drag it into this sandbox.babylonjs.com. This is a great tool to just get a real easy view of what the models look like. Right, we're dealing with GLTF 3D model format. This site's great. You just grab the files and drag it on, and it'll render it. So let's take a look. So I'm just going to drag this in. It'll likely give me an error, right? Which is okay. I kind of want that. What it's telling me is that it's also expecting a texture. You'll see this sometimes. It doesn't happen all the time. But what that means is that when I go in here, I'm going to grab that texture as well, and I'm going to drag it on in, and we're going to take a look at it. So this is I guess it's the entire dispenser, and we'll notice something weird about it, which is that it's got weird blocks in places that you wouldn't expect them to be. That's cool. There are a couple animations here, pour and blank. And if we go ahead and we open this up, let's take a look at why that's there, because I want to reiterate over this as much as possible. But when we do these types of interactions, we need to have colliders. Colliders are important for when the user clicks on something. Even though the model, it has a very complicated mesh, you don't want to have a very complicated collider. So like they're usually very simple shapes that are hidden. And if we were to take a look at this inside of here, we'll see that deep in here, there's a couple of our colliders. And we have this beer dispenser collider. I'm going to toggle these off, the visibility, just so we can see them. There's another collider, right? So if you are making your 3D models, if you add a shape with underscore collider, Decentraland will automatically interpret that and pull it in. So this is actually what the model does look like. It doesn't have any of the taps because those come in a separate model. What we have here is we have beer dispenser underscore collider. We have green base underscore collider, red base. Now we'll be using these at a point to identify where the user is going to be putting down their beer mug, right? So we want to have this information. It's good to know where it is. This is what this model does, and it's playing an animation, but it's not really actually animating anything. Let's take a look at a couple more models. Let's look at our green tap. Now I think it's going to ask for this anyway, so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to pull it in. All right, so we have the same issue with this one. It's a little annoying. So let's go into our nodes. If you ever see this, see green tap, we have our kaleidos, turn off. So this is the pour animation that we see here. And there's two animations. There's pour and there's blank. Okay, pour and there's blank. It's off center. You can't really tell at the moment, but some of these models, they position their center, right? X, Y, Z. Like this model, where would you say the center of this model is? Well, it's not something that's easily derivable from the model. Like it's up to the artist to put, is the 0, 0, 0, is it up here? Is it over here? Is it over there? Sometimes 3D modelers will put them in just totally incorrect places. But I think we were very lucky in that these models are, they're fairly intelligent about how they lay them out. So we'll see about that. So let me just look at one more model, which is the, I don't know, we got the tables. All right, those are the individual places you can put it. And we also have the beer glass itself. So I'm just gonna grab those. We don't have to look at all the individual colors of every tap. Oop, did I do that? Where's that? I'm getting messages. Let me just see if there's any specific messages from people. Okay. All right, sweet. Okay, so I don't know why that's, oh, I need the transparent. So this model also needs this transparency texture. There we go. That's our beautiful mug. It's automatically playing a couple of these animations, but we have blank, which is empty. We also have red, which I guess is a beer color. Yellow is a beer color, and green, I don't know why the artist decided this, but I guess it's St. Patrick's Day somewhere. So those are the three colors that we have. Okay, just want to familiarize everybody with everything. Cool. So let's take a look at our world. All right. So I just want to make sure that it is running for everybody. Kind of just like anyone that is following along, I just want to make sure that everything is running. Just waiting for one response.
It's running for me, but I don't, like when I click pour, it doesn't really pour it in the mug. It just pours it without like putting it out under the thing.
It pours. So you pick it up. You have to point to one of these specific areas, and then you hit F. And then when you hit E, it should pour your beverage, your green beverage, and then you can drink it, and then you can put it down. Okay. Well, I'm gonna continue on. It is working on this one. I'm not sure what the specific ones. If there's somebody that can field it, just throw in the chat, and we'll try to address it while we're doing this. Okay. Let's take a look at the code. So what I've done is I restructured it, and I want to go over what I restructured, and I want to talk about why. So the last session we kind of talked about this whole base concept of you know, putting an entity and then being able to rotate it. I didn't do it on this project, and I mean, typically you will do that. I just haven't done it. So right there, I got a strike against me in terms of best practices, but we're going to move on. I have the tables. These things don't move, so it's not as important, but they just are just 3D models. They're just aesthetics. Doesn't matter. Up here, I have a call to a beer dispenser object that is, it is both the beer, that one beer dispenser, and also each of the individual taps. And I'm also instancing out a single beer glass, which will hopefully make like a replicator later where we can just go and just grab a fresh beer glass. Right? That would be, I guess, our ideal state, depending on time. We'll see what we get there. So let's take a look at that beer dispenser. Okay. So if that ever happens, just go over here and click that because that's annoying. Okay. So what we have here is our beer dispenser entity. It's a lot more complicated than what we saw last week. But I'm going to kind of walk through what we're doing. We're setting up all of our taps: red tap, yellow tap, green tap. We're basically made a new class type called beer tap. Now, if because these objects are entities, theoretically you kind of can do like entity but it might bark at you, and there might be errors and everything. But we lose something in TypeScript that is absolutely necessary, which is that when we hover over the element, we get to inspect what functions and properties they are. So in my beer tap, right, I got a bunch of functions in here. I got place beer, play pour animation, stop animations, add pointer down. If I was ever to reference it and just use entity, well, it's just not going to work all that well, right? I won't. It would say, beer tap dot place beer doesn't exist on entity. So we're gonna do this together. Okay. We also have our class. So our class is structured. It's got all of the variables that we have. We declare animation states, right? We know that we want to when we instantiate a beer glass, we want to make one. We want to just give it a position in space. So this beer glass only has one parameter in it, its position, and from that, it creates a new transform. So as we talked about last week, every entity, if it wants to be rendered on your screen, it really needs about three things. It needs a component for the transform, which determines its position, rotation, and scale. It needs a shape, which for this instance, we got a model, but it could be box shape, it could be whatever, right? And it needs to be added to the engine, which is what we have here. That's the bare minimum that every entity needs in order to render something to the screen, for the most part. We also have in here, we have our beer mug has its own animations. So we have, we set this up here, add component, new animator. Last week I kind of messed this aspect of it up, but rest assured it is fixed now. What I did here with this animator is I decided to place them up top as part of my beer glass entity. And I decided to name them, very specific things like this.anim for blank, for red, yellow, green, just for a very specific reason of that. In my code later on, I think it's a lot cleaner if I want to remove all of the beer in this mug, I can just call that, right? Or if down below, when you're picking up an entity, one of these classes, oh, I guess it doesn't do that for that one. Where is it? Fill glass. Yeah. So it's just, we grab the color type and then we just hit play. And then if we drink animation for blank, it's just so we can call it a lot easier a little bit later, essentially. Okay. So let's see one more thing. Okay. So on the beer glass, I've set a couple properties, right? Our beer glass has a couple states in it. And I really want to encourage people that when you're building out these types of like smarter components, is that you put all of the variables up on the top. So as a developer, if I came across this, that one of the things I would want or I appreciate the most is that I can see everything that's going to happen in here. Obviously, you can declare variables further down, and it just gets a little confusing. So wherever possible, declare them up top. So without any much of a problem, we can say, hey, this beer glass has a Boolean of is it full, is it not? What color is it? Is it red? Is it yellow? Is it green? Right? Stoplight colors. Is it currently being held? And we'll get to this hold position thing in just a second. It might be useful actually to comment some of the stuff out and then throw it in little by little. Let me see, should I do that? That'd be easier. Picking up, I might want to do something like that. Yeah, I might want to do something like that. Okay, so I'm going to make a new directory. We're just going to use this as like a reference because I think some of this stuff is really important to maybe go over. Maybe what we'll do is we'll make some other entity to pick up. No, okay. I think I should just stick with it. Okay, so let's go over each of these individual functions. The majority of this session is supposed to be directed towards the message bus and the Colossus web server. So pickup. All right, so what this is checking for is if the current player is holding they should, in order to pick up this mug, they should not be holding anything, right? That also, like, there should not be any entity that is being ID that is being held, and they shouldn't be in the process of picking up. And this is just a weird little nuance for the way that the when the button presses work. It's pretty important. Basically just kind of set up that the user is picking up the object. We are setting the parent, right? So remember how with the other entities, you can nest them like divs. So this is our first introduction to a thing called an attachable. And an attachable is, there's only a couple things in here. Actually, if you hit attachable dot, it'll show you that you really have like the first person camera, or we have like an avatar. Either of those two things, I think mostly, right? But that's pretty much it. There might be things in the future that are added to attachable, by the way, but at the moment, those are just the two ones, right? So when you pick it up, you want to see this mug in your face, right? So attach it to the first person camera. The second thing is when you pick it up, you want to be able to position this this mug somewhere close to your face. And let's start messing around with this right now. So let's do that. Actually, I'm just going to copy this thing out. Okay. And I'm going to just, I'm going to show you guys some of the nuances to this system. New vector 3000. Right. So this is, let's start with even getting rid of this set parent. How about that? Okay. Let's actually go to the top. Hold on. I did that for debugging purposes. Okay, so I'm running this again. It should hot refresh. Okay, our mug has been positioned all the way here in the corner to start when I do this, right? And if I pick it up, where did it go? It went to the corner and it disappeared. That's because the entity is hanging outside of the bounds of this specific area, so it just disappeared a little. That's not where at all I want that entity. I want it to be in my hand and on my face. So let's go ahead and let's add back this set parent, right? So what this is going to do is now when I come over to this thing and I pick it up, it's going to, well, it disappeared. It didn't go to the corner like it did last time, but where did it go? Right. So if I zoom out for a second, you'll see that it's placed inside of my head. So this is where the avatars, the first person camera, this is where their XYZ location is, just in general. But now I run around and it's just stuck to my head, right, in that general area. It's not stuck to any part of the model specifically, but it's just there. Yep. Also, if you have any questions, please direct them to the chat. And also, Nico, if you have anything to add, just please chime in a moment. Let's just take a look also at the other, like if we were to attach this to the avatar, let's see, out of curiosity, where would that go? All right, so where is it? Where did our beer mug go? It's over here. I have to refresh. So what we want to be able to do is we want to position it relative to that camera space so that it's visible in first person mode. And we'll see it's kind of silly looking a little bit when it's not technically held there. But like if it's an avatar mode, I think it's like it's inside of the belly. You can kind of see it coming out of the back there, right? So I think that for this instance, you may actually just want to have it in the camera, right? And the position is still 0, 0, 0. I'm going to just do this. So I'm going to move this over for a second. Okay. So to make this a little bit simpler, I'm going to just have it call pickup, right? So I had that kind of happening up here. So every time I save, it's going to automatically just call this. This is mostly just to kind of help during this phase of placing this specific entity, because it can get really annoying to have to refresh a lot, or to you know, it just makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to just try to add some values. Like if I hit, you have X, Y, Z, and always remember in Decentraland, Y is up and down. So X, Y, Z, let's see about just moving this thing. If we move it 1, it's going to move it 1 meter above the user's head. That's really not what I want, but I do want to kind of move it down, maybe like that, -0.2, right? It's kind of a little bit further. I can actually switch to first person mode over here. And I kind of can't see it still. Let's move out until it's in a better spot. Let's see, what direction is this? If I do 0.5, all right, kind of play with it. So that goes in that direction. I don't need it to go that far. And then in the other direction, which I think is a lot more important, I'm just going to say like 0.5 meter, maybe. It's probably too far out there. Oh, but if I move to first person view, I should probably see it, right? It's a little too high. So you can play around with the values here. Luckily, I've kind of already done quite a bit of that. I already kind of messed around with the numbers. And what I've done is up top in my beer glass, because I know what position kind of works. It's actually this one here, right? So it's 0.2, negative 0.35, and then 0.5, right? So I'm going to actually just use that value instead. So this is one of the more annoying, tedious kind of parts. I don't know how it could be done in a better way, to be honest with you, but when you're doing this, just that's probably the best way. I've done this a bunch of times. If you zoom out, you can see it's kind of hovering. So I do know that in the future, they do intend to allow the avatars to actually hold objects and do other things. And it might be a little bit of time to get there. I think they have some other priorities, but for the time being, this is what we're going to deal with. I think that once the virtual reality and those types of things actually happen, this should be very easy to attach it to the hand, right? When we get to that point in Decentraland's history, which hopefully will be within a year or so. Hopefully.
Hey everyone, Nico here. Yeah, I just wanted to chime in about that. So yeah, that's absolutely something we want. Like right now, having objects just floating in front of your avatar is slightly awkward. But one thing that might be happening in the not so distant future is probably having like being able to have scenes have animations coded into them and be able to trigger a different animation on the avatar. So maybe one animation could be walk with a glass or jump with a glass. And so a scene could probably override the default animation so that the player is, holding their hand up to where the glass is.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's, I mean, don't expect that coming in the next couple of weeks, but hopefully like in the next few months. That'd
be really cool. So if there are like 3D modelers that are watching this, I guess they would maybe be able to use the bones on the avatar model that is provided in the DCL in one of the repositories, and they can animate it like they would with wearables, and maybe be able to, like for future state, so they can start to prepare a bunch of animations.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we're even, so this is something that is still in discussion and would definitely need to go through the DAO and everything. But one thing that's been discussed several times that many of us love is the idea of having animations as NFTs. And just like, you can, brag about having this, special NFT that's super unique, you could have like a super unique animation, like a special dance that no one else can do, stuff like that.
Okay, that's interesting. Like in Fortnite, I guess like people have the celebrations and things that they earn or win over time and stuff. That'd be really cool. And I definitely know that just simply adding them as an option for your game, that would be really huge. You can have crouch, you can have like, obviously like you have jump, and you can have like more, you have cartwheel, you have whatever. You can make more elaborate.
Absolutely.
That is really good to know. I'm excited about that. But I guess like for the moment, this is what we're dealing with. Thank you, Nico, by the way. Chime in at any point, please.
Sure.
Okay. So okay, so we got through the positioning, right? So I have in here in the code, I have a thing called player state, and the reason why I wanted to make it a little more portable, and we'll see where that is. It's over in multiplayer, and it's in state. Okay, so we have a couple things going on here. I wanted to abstract it away because I know in the very near future, as my game develops and stuff, I want to move this state somewhere else. I either want it locally and it's in a tangible place, or I might want to eventually move it to the Colossus server or someplace else for certain stuff. So by abstracting this type of stuff out in the earlier stages of my project, it'll make that process a hell of a lot easier. And I highly encourage like people to kind of like maybe try to take on a structure, something similar to this. If you have a better idea, obviously just like let the community know. Go in the SDK room if you have a better way of handling it, because we're always looking to make the best practices better. But our player state is of this specific interface. Now, don't really want to get too much into TypeScript's particulars. I know that there are some people that are familiar with it. I know some people that are not. But basically, when we're declaring these types of things, and we'll come across them quite often, I think, during this this code, there's two types of things, right? There's an interface. Let's say, let's call it a vector. Let's rebuild the vector 3 interface. Okay, so interface. So we know that a vector 3 has in it has a shape. It isn't just an object that has an X, Y, and Z. I mean, it has to have those. They're necessary. So what we can do is we can actually tell with the interface that I have an X that's a number, I have a Y that's a number, and I have a Z that's a number. If I want to make one of these things conditional, right, I could add a little question mark over here, I guess, right? That's just one aspect of it, right? Now, if I was to do const, which is typical to JavaScript, const some vector, I basically now in TypeScript, I can say, I want this to be of this shape. I'm declaring it. If it was a string, I would do string. Oops. If it was a number, I would do number. But for this, I want it to have that shape. So now, if I do this, you're going to see that TypeScript's already mad. I haven't even done anything yet, TypeScript. But it's going to say, I'm missing X and Y. It's not mentioning Z. So I can go X, 1, Y is 2, right? It's not yelling at me about Z because it doesn't need it. It's not necessary. But if I were to remove it, now it's upset and do that, right? So when we're building out these types of things, I prefer to do an interface for damn near anything that I'm working with for a lot of reasons. But you'll see this a lot in the code, and I guess we're just going to kind of have to get used to it a little bit together. Obviously, you can take a specific TypeScript related course to kind of get over the nuance, the other weird aspects of it, right? You'll see this a lot, which is holding entity ID. This value can either be a string or nothing at all, absolutely nothing. And we do that with a pipe. You can also do something like undefined, right? You might want to say, you can do entity, any type of object, essentially, that you would want to put in there. But for this, is just that is holding this Boolean, right? You can see that. Now, if I came in here and I put a number in here, it's already telling me this type of stuff is great because it's notifying me about what could be problematic later, and it's letting me know to address it at this moment. So it's like, hey, number is not assignable to type string, right? Which is great. It's great. Love it. Okay, so this is where we're going to be holding on to the state. Let's go back to our glass. So we picked up, we set when I go in, I hit this button. Just walk through real quick. Let me put it down. All right. What am I doing? Okay, right. So when I pick it up, boom, picked it up. It's setting the beer's internal property to if it is currently being picked up, it's attaching the object to my face. It's setting the position a little bit off so I can see it in the area that I want. It's setting now the player's state is holding, and this specific beer entity has its own UUID. So let's just take a look at that real quick. Let's say log this, and let's do debugger. I want to try to do this as much as possible because I think it's really important when you're developing in Decentraland, also with anything on the web. The debugger is just fantastic, right? So as we kind of went over last session, whenever your code comes across this and your console here is open, your developer tools, it's going to stop the JavaScript dead in its tracks. Let's do that. Boom, right? It went all the way there. It came across this thing and it said, hey, I guess the coder wanted me to stop right now. And that's what it did. And this gives me an opportunity to look over all of the current state of what this is. It also gives me a lot of information over here. like what the current scope of all the variables are, and also the call stack, which if you're, you know, really, really super nerdy, you can get into here and go, well, I called beer glass.pickup. It was on this pointer down function, right? You can go really, really in the weeds on it. Sometimes that's really useful to look in here and see if an error or something pops up, like, you know, where it might be. I have a specific YouTube video that dedicated to more about stuff just like this, the debugging tools, on my YouTube channel. So you guys can always take a look at that. It's just YouTube DCL Connect. Hopefully we'll bring it to my YouTube channel. But let's take a look at some of the stuff that's in here, right? Oop, console. So because it is frozen, I can actually go into the console and I could type in various commands right now without any problem. I get a little bit more visibility about what's happening. This is always going to be important. So look, I got my entity, the class object. It's called beer glass, right? But you can see it's got not only the regular stuff that entities generally have. Alive is one of them. We have here UUID. This is a random string. It's not maybe random, maybe not. I don't know. It's always different, I guess, sometimes. But every entity.
As far as I know, it's sorry. As far as I know, it's completely random.
It is completely random.
But it's scene dependent. So you could have different scenes that use the same IDs, but it's fine.
Okay, cool. And this is like I always get Ed. I don't know why. It seems like I always have that one. But at this moment, this beer glass is E1W and everything. So what we're doing here is we're using that as a marker. So when I pick this thing up, I'm basically telling the player that state, I'm telling the player state like, hey, I'm holding something, and also this is the ID. All right, we should still be paused, right? Keep that in mind, we're still paused. And let's take a look at something else, because this is gonna be important. So our engine that we have, we take a look at this thing, it's pretty big. All right, this is where we add our entities, our systems, this is where we remove, you know, all of our stuff as well. Like we remove a bunch of stuff. Nico, let me know if there's a newer, better way of handling this as well, because as much as I try to keep up, you guys are just making things so much faster. All right.
No, I mean, this is a great way to do it. I was just wanted to chime in a tip. So if when you do new entity, you pass in an argument, you can actually like set a custom name for the entity. So rather than having one of these random names, you could, you know, just call it beer mug, and that makes it a lot easier to handle. Oh, so here we're never explicitly doing new entity, right? We're doing that through the the constructor.
But you can do it
in the super, yeah. Not sure if it works there, but worth a shot.
I think that's how it goes. We get a little confusing, but just out of our own curiosity, let's see. No, wait, this. Yeah, the name is beer glass. Okay.
Yes, nice.
Good. One issue with that is that if I'm making a bunch of these beer glasses, they're all going to have that name. I don't know how it would handle it.
Yeah. But maybe you could pass in, so the constructor could have another argument, or maybe you could have some kind of counter defined in the class that gets, you know, that adds one to an extra number to that string. So instead of making that string directly beer glass, it's beer glass plus a number that gets added with the task of you know, calling the constructor.
We could totally do that. I like that. We could do that. We can also do. I've been using maps lately. And we'll maybe get into that in just a little bit. So maps are a way of organizing. You have arrays, you have objects, but you have maps and you have sets. And we'll get into that. They're very popular in JavaScript for web development, or at least I believe so. I mean, I use them all the time. But in Decentraland, they're not really all that common at the moment. I do not think that they're actually, Nico, that's not part of the official SDK, right?
Not quite, no. So one of the limitations we have is that, so the SDK is, like currently it runs in a browser, but we can't really rely on things that, you know, depend on a browser. And as far as I know, I may be wrong here, but I think that maps aren't like part of the like vanilla JavaScript or TypeScript. They're kind of like part of Node, I think. I'm not entirely sure about this one. But I do believe that so we do plan to support maps officially in the near future. Like it shouldn't be too far off.
Okay. And in the meantime, I think there is like a workaround, but also when the complete separation between the SDK from the web browser, well, a lot of things that are really exciting are going to happen at that moment, but it might break some people's code. So,
Right. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just keep that in mind.
So yeah, that's one point I wanted to go to before. Like when we have Decentraland running in a native client, we can't really rely on anything that is browser dependent. So we're trying to do a a cutoff point as early as possible, so that people don't build their content relying on that. Like scenes that still use old versions of Decentraland should still run. Like that, we did that cut on version 666 because we thought it was a nice time to to do something that could be, controversial. As far as we know, not a lot of people use things that are browser dependent because they were never, documented or encouraged, but some people do. And those scenes should still work as long as they stay with older versions of the SDK. But eventually, when we have the native client, then they would stop working in that context.
Okay. So we'll just keep that in the back of our minds. Awesome. I love to hear stuff like that because that's going to open up a whole new world of stuff to play with.
Yeah.
New buttons and all this other stuff. We have put down, so it's just basically the reverse of pickup almost, right? So we're setting the is holding to be false, the ID to be nothing. We're removing the parent. So when that happens, it's just I'm removing it from my face and now it's back into the world where it should be. When you put it down, you want to tell it where in the world you want to put the mug. So whenever I call this function, I'm just passing like the XYZ, right? And I was almost kind of do that. And I'm re-adding back this thing that we haven't gotten to, which is the add pointer down. So when you walk up to this item, I'm kind of doing this in a weird order. I apologize, everybody. Let's just actually close this thing. So when I'm walking up to the mug, right, you see that pickup E. What that is this component, the on pointer down. Right. I could have done this up here where I put in a whole bunch of other stuff. I could have done it right up here. Actually, let's paste it. No. I could have put it up there, but I didn't do that because I want to remove it for certain instances. If I'll show you exactly the reason why I have done that. So if I had it up here, which is still standard fine code, right, referencing this, right, we'll see why I decided to do that, right? So I walk up, oops, hold on. This should be working. Here. That's interesting. Might have broken a code. Down. Interesting. I don't know why it's not doing it now. Oh. I don't know why it's not doing it. That is particularly interesting. I don't understand. But anyway, what it would do normally, I'm just going to revert it because I don't have time for this nonsense at the moment. It's probably something very simple and very stupid that I'm overlooking at the moment, but it's defeating the point. What basically would have happened, and I would tell you, is when I have it in my head, if I was in this view and my cursor went over it, somehow it would have that button reveal again. And you don't want to pick it up if you already picked it up. So what I would do in that situation is I just turn it off. It's like, you remove a button event from a button, you disable it for a time when you don't want someone to click it more than once. And that's essentially what you can do with these, right? So in this one, I do remove component because there can only be one component for one instance of it on this thing. That's totally cool. I can just do this remove component. It knows, hey, I have one of those. Is there another variant of this too? No, there isn't. Okay. Sometimes there's like or null or something like that. Okay, so that's what's happening here. Put down. This is now just doing about the same thing. I tell it where I want to put it. It's basically the same. We have our stopping of our animations, right? We have filling of our glass. Some of this should be intuitive enough, and I could probably skip it. And the drink animation, Right? We're setting it to be false. We're stopping animations. We're emptying the bottle. And we're playing a sound as well. Let's see. I did do this one thing up here, which is I made just a simple object just to make it easier for me to reference these entities without much of a problem. It's just like a helper, essentially. And it just makes the code a little bit cleaner at the sacrifice of just one more thing in memory, but it's fine. Okay, let's take a look at our tap. All right, so when we go up to this tap, you can, let's put this down for a second, right? I can just hit this E4. I can have them all running at the same time if I wanted to. If I put it underneath it, now something interesting has to happen. It has to know what mug is there. It needs to know what is, what color it is in order to fill up this specific mug. Right. So let's take a look at beer tap. So we have, when I set each of these up, I define its color. So is it red, yellow, green? There's a position offset aspect of it too. We don't need to go on to that just yet, but we're adding our transform, our shape. We're adding in our animations. I didn't abstract them away like I did with the other one, which I totally should have, but we'll see exactly why I have to do this every time, right? If I want to play a specific animation. It's not that it's ugly, it's just that it's just maybe we don't want that every time. Maybe I just want to do this dot play pour, or it's half of this stuff we're battling with usability, essentially. This that type of thing does make this interaction a lot more usable. Okay, so that's all we need to do about that. Now let's take a look at our beer dispenser, which is a little more complicated. So the beer dispenser is this entire thing. It is its own object. It has in it 3 other objects, right? So when we take a look at this beer dispenser, we're setting the position. Let me just shuffle this stuff around. I should just do this. Sorry. Okay. Sweet. So let's just show you. So remember how we did with the base last week? You can. I'm moving all of them at the same time. So now it's all the way over here. Like I can go over here, and it's got to reach really high, but it still works. They're all moving together. And if I was to jump up here, I haven't tried this. It's this object now is movable. It's very, very portable. Whereas I believe in the previous instance of the code, you really couldn't kind of do that. So by setting it up in this specific way, what we're allowed to do now is I can actually probably move it down over here. Let's see this. I can do something where I think that was the original value. Let's just pull it back down to home base. Cool. Let's just do something just to show you guys why building our components in this way are really, really useful. Let's say position. I want to pass in a vector 3, right? So when I make a new beer dispenser, now in the past I didn't do anything. I didn't say any value, but now I want to pass in a position, and because I might want to have this thing change, right? So I'm just gonna just do that, right? So now it's necessary. It's not going to be happy with me because where I create it, it's over here. New beer dispenser, right? It's upset. You can see over here it turns red as well to let you know that there's as you move around your code, you'll notice things turn red. Those are where, it's like whack-a-mole sometimes. If I put this in, it just goes into the machine and it puts it there, right? But I can also now make beer dispenser 2. And I could put this one, let's put it over by the start. I don't know exactly where, but I think like over there might be nice. Yeah, it's like it's a little bit still too, it's a little bit too much. Let's just say, maybe 0.5. You just have to mess with these a little bit at times. Oh, it's a little too much. 8.8. There you go. So now should be able. I haven't tried this, but lo and behold, it still works. All right. So now we just increased our beer production twofold because we organized our objects in this specific way. So if you wanted to have like a, I don't know, a beer serving game between two players, well, now it's a lot easier to do that type of thing. Okay. Sweet. Let's also take a look at the glasses now, because we kind of broke these guys out in the way that we did. We can also now very easily just kind of just make a bunch of beer glasses. Let's just make a nice row of them. All right. I can iterate over an array. I can I can just make them whatever I want. But we're going to do something a little bit different in a second. Cool. So we got all the different glasses. I'm just going to pick that one, put it down, right down. Right. They're both there's no problems with this. Like, it's just, you could pick it up and then you can drink it. You can get real drunk, like I plan on doing after the session's over. Boom, like that. Cool. Really sweet. I might also want to build a thing that just creates a new beer glass. Maybe we can do something like that too. Let's see. What is it? I also want to introduce you guys to some of the other more like the utility set. So let's go to our docs. Remind me later. Docs.Decentraland. Let's open this up. Okay. So let's take a look at the other utilities that the SDK has, because there's a lot of other ones that can help us. So we have our scene utils. If we go into scene utils, right, utils library, there's a lot of cool stuff in here, moving things along a path, right? We could put these beer mugs on a conveyor belt or something, and you have to grab them, and a whole bunch. You can do whatever, right? You can have this thing called sustained rotation, which just means it just floats. I mean, just rotates at a consistent rate. Scale, toggle time. We're looking for a very specific one for right now, which is our Debug Cube. So this is used a lot. We have, if you are using the repository, you don't have to kind of worry about setting this up. You should be able to just use this, I think. So let's start. So let's start making the thing. I'm just pasting it in. It is it, if I just come in here, I want to see if it'll autocomplete for me. So I just kind of remove that, add test cube. Typescript is auto-completing. It says, you can see over here, DCL/ boom. It automatically will add it. Look how easy. And it's going to put it at 212. That's fine, but I think I might want to put it at 3, just so it's away from my other thing. And when you click on this cube, it's going to do something. We want to just put something down to test out right now. Let's see if it'll do it. I might have to reload. If the demo gods are in our favor, this will be good. We still haven't gotten to the message bus stuff, but we're going to do that in just a second. And actually, Nico, I might need your assistance on some of that, because it appears like the message bus might have changed a little bit recently. Okay.
Has it?
Might have. I'll point it out.
Interesting.
Get it to the docs.
Okay.
Right in a good way.
It hasn't, but okay.
I mean, or at least it's a little different from the docs. But,
okay.
Is Robert, you on? Robert wanted to help out with the docs.
Yeah, super welcome.
You need some doc help. So you can see here, this cube is here, and I am clicking, and it is console logging. Let's just move it over just a bit more, and let's give it a new. Let's say that instead of these mugs just floating around, okay, let's say that we set how do we do? We can get rid of these guys. We're gonna get introduced to something. We just want a new beer class. Right? It's gonna make a new one at that location when I click this button. Right? I'm just making a new one. Boom, click. It's just there. The problem is I still have in my beer glass that it's automatically, because I was testing stuff out to pick up. Let's turn that off. Sorry. That was a helper function. It's no longer helping. So as I click, we'll see our little mug over here. They're all appearing right there. That could be annoying. What I would like to do is just walk up to this and immediately pick up. right? I would want it just in my hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to do const a new glass equals new beer glass, right? And then we could do new glass dot see, because I'm defined it as a class. I got pickup, boom. That's all I need. So I could take this entity type of thing and I could just go boom. I got my mug and I put it down. Now I have a near infinite amount of mugs and I could probably just spam the whole world. All right, and you can put them on the floor too. We'll get to that in a second. All right, it's pretty cool, right? We got a whole little bar going on over here, guys. Pretty sweet. Cause a celebration. Oh, still have my debugger open. Let's just ignore that. Let's drink. Let's toast. Let's drink, celebrate that we got that thing working first time. Cool. Okay, so let's take a look at the dispenser still, because we didn't really get into it, but now we know a lot about what's happening in there. We have our taps, right? Our taps taking a color and the offset, right? Because these guys are part of the entire dispenser. Remember, you just moved it around. We just cloned it. What I want is these guys to be placed relative to the actual dispenser, right? If I didn't do that, I would have to hand place each of these, and what annoying life that would lead, right? That would be terrible. So we just have an offset for where they are relative to the center. So, you know, one is negative and one is positive, and, you know, you just have to play around with it until you get it right. Or if your 3D modeler that you know, the designer that you have tells it to you specifically, it's even better. We're doing the same thing. We see this all the time. We need to see it. Transform, we're adding every entity needs a transform objects. I'll reiterate this as much as possible. And it needs a shape, right? There's a new thing that we're going to introduce in just a second. Before we get there, let's go down. I have to set the parent of each of these to the dispenser so that they're position relative and that these make a hell of a lot more sense. And I have this place beer function. This one is just kind of acts as a proxy, sort of. So when you click on it to put the beer down, this kind of grabs it and goes, I know what to do with this. Which mesh was it that you touched, right? So if we go back to that very first thing that we were talking about, that seemed like an hour ago, let's just grab these guys and just dump them in. We remember those annoying colliders. Right? Did I do this correctly? What is happening here? Come on, friend. There we go, right? So you guys remember earlier when we were looking at these colliders, they are important. They're very, very important. So we had our beer, that one collider there, but then these are the important ones. Green base collider, right? That's the one all the way there on the right. We have a red base collider. So when we hit our buttons, one of the things that's going to let us know is exactly what collider it messed with, what collider it touched. So in our code, we have this. We have red base collider, yellow base collider, green base collider. And all this is really kind of saying is like, hey, when you when the user wants to put it down, if it hits any of these guys, we're gonna go to the right tap. We're gonna set the right color. We're gonna put it in the right position, essentially, right? As we go through it, that's what's happening here. It's just saying, hey, it found a mesh. What mesh was it? And it's doing this wonderful thing that I should probably address now. So you'll see this in my code a lot, and this is where we are we're declaring something as something new. What does that mean? Well, if I did a log entity at this moment, and I was to take a look at all of the properties, it is officially a beer tap. Typescript just thinks of it, though, as a regular entity. And remember how when we enter our tap, like, we made a bunch of custom functions. We got place beer. These are not known to TypeScript. They're not known really much at all. But what we're doing by saying as beer tap is we're kind of saying, hey, this is an entity, but it's a very specific type. It is a beer tap. So you're kind of what is it called? Nico, what's the word? It's like you're. I said this word like 10 times earlier today, even before this presentation.
Inheritance, like your.
It's not an inheritance. You're basically declaring it as a beer tap. There's another word. It's a perfect word, and I'll think of it later. It's assigning
It's
it.
like a child type.
Oh, damn it! No, it's gonna bother me. My brain has basically confirmed that it's not going to remember that word, and I should move on. That's what happened. But you'll see this. But this is great though, because tap entity dot, let's say place beer, right? Let's say new entity, just something weird, right? It satisfies this, right? If I get rid of this, it's gonna get mad because it's like, hey, entity doesn't have that function, right? It doesn't have it. So that's why you'll see this around a lot, and it's really useful, and it's probably good to get your head wrapped around like leveraging this as much as possible. So it makes it a lot easier, I think. If there's a better way, I don't know it yet. Okay, so let's now take a look at, we went over all of these functions, but we haven't gone into how any of these functions are actually being called yet. So let's just refresh. I know that has to refresh while I do this. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these other, what happened? How did that happen? Other files. Okay, so we have game. We've been in here a lot. We have 2 beer dispensers. We got a test cube. Let's take a look at input. So I like to break this out a little bit. This is where I'm putting all of the button presses. So if we were to take a look at the docs themselves, which we should always get familiar with. Let's see, let's scroll all the way up because it's on the left-hand side. It should be button events. All right, so you can come here and you can take a look. We have the pointer down. We kind of already been through this with the beer when you pick it up, right? And pointer up is when you release it, right? But now let's get down to, just keep going down. There's other attributes you can give it, right? You saw some of this. What type of text you want it to say, and if they should see that button, like the actual button on the screen to let the user know that's there. You can set the distance for like how far away you want this interaction, but we're going to get down to actual key presses in a second. Here, so here we have, this is it. Button down. It's a, we have our button down event. You can put down what type of button. So like this one says pointer still, but there's also primary, which is the E, and then secondary, I think, which is F key, right? So that's what we see in this file here. Is just subscribe anytime that button down happens, and it is of this button, the primary action button. This is a value. It's for ray casting. I'll get to that in just a second. And then it has a callback function, which this is what actually gets executed when that button is pressed. So I'm just checking if the user's holding something, if it has an ID. I'm basically gonna drink the beer if these things are certain things are happening. For the F key, which is what we use to put it down, what we're gonna see here is this other value that I just hastily kind of skipped. It's important because this gives us information on what the user is currently looking at. So let's do a quick log of event. Let's take a look at this. And let's also throw in debugger because we want it to stop. So if we go in here, might have to hit refresh. Probably have to hit refresh. So Nico, in the future, this will have a lot more buttons potentially, or this type of process. So instead of primary, secondary, it'll be maybe other buttons as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the big things I want to push in the near future. Yeah, having support for at least a handful more buttons, because you run out of them quite quick.
Oh yeah, it's really hard to do. People are really crafty with just using EF and spacebar, but having a lot more buttons would be absolutely game changing, literally.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at. Let me open up those I'm hitting Shift Command C on a Mac to open up my developer tools. Now that they're open, the debugger will work. Oh, let me go grab a cube. Boom. Oh, I got to click. I forgot. There you go. So it appears in a fun matrix fashion. All right. Now when I hit F, it gets that debugger. Right? I hit that button. I hit that F key, the secondary down, and now we have our event. I'm going to open up console a little bit, and let's do event. And let's take a look at it in a little bit more depth. If you were just to hover it over it, it does the same thing, but this is a little bit easier. Yeah. So we have, it lets us know what button it is. Now, the direction I'm unfamiliar with. I think that might be the raise direction. What is direction?
Probably, yeah.
Probably.
So probably you wouldn't see this if that property you were setting on the other event as false was false here as well. Because when you set that as false, you're not checking for any collisions with other any entities.
That's right.
When that's true, then you get some extra info.
Nico's talking about this value here. So up here it's false, meaning I don't care about those values. I don't think the engine should waste its time. But with this one, I do want to know where the user is looking, what object it's at. So I add true here, and that's what gives us these values. Sweet. Also, we have hit. So obviously it did at some point hit something. It'll tell us the entity's ID, where XYZ it actually was, which is right here, right on the ledge here is where it hit. It tells us the mesh name. Remember how the colliders are important? It's saying that it's on a table, right? Now the normal is, this is essentially it hit this mesh, this table, and it's a flat cube. But this this shape here, let me scroll this down for just a second. See this whole thing? This is made of triangles. The normal is the direction that is facing. So imagine this this square here is actually two triangles split usually down the center of one or the other, but that triangle is faced in a specific direction. And what this little bit of line of code is saying is that hey, if it's like pretty much straight up, like if it's looking up, if it's a flat surface, then run this code, right? So if I try to run F on the side of this side, it's not working, right? And the reason why that it's not working is because the normal isn't faced in the right direction, right? So let's see. It might be worthwhile to oh, I'm also paused, so it's not going to do it. Let's just do a quick thing, because I think it's important that we get a little familiar with the normals just real fast, just real quick. Now next week we're going to be getting much more into Blender, and even if you are not an artist of any kind, I highly recommend you still watch, pay attention to it, because you're going to come across a lot of these things. We're going to go over textures, which you more than likely will be messing with, and it's just really, you want to be as well-rounded as you can, right? This cube, it is customary, it is like a ritual to just go hit X and just delete, and then the best thing is when you just start and you add a cube right back in the same spot. It's kind of, you need it, I don't know, you need to do it. To move around in this space, I hit Shift and the little squiggly next to the 1, and that enters first person mode, and I can move around a lot easier. Let's take a look at something. I want to just show you guys the normals. Okay. Now we'll get into this next week, but this is a good visual, right? Don't worry necessarily about how all this stuff is happening, but okay, cool. So you might have noticed that there's a bunch of little lines that are sticking out right now on my cube. They're not part of the model, they're not part of the mesh, but they're just a visual indicator to let me know what direction this is facing, right? So if I was to like rotate it, ooh, you can see that it's on a different, it's rotating in a different direction, right, very easily. Just do that. Okay. Now you'll see this sometimes in models. That's really annoying. Let's go to a different view. You might get a model, and unfortunately, you can't see a side of it or something, right? Like that's not doing it now. Anyway, you'll see that the mesh might be missing a piece or so. It's just because the normals are flipped. I just want to show you guys that they're all facing a direction in case it wasn't abundantly clear. So that's essentially what's happening here. We're just checking if it's facing up. It's important. So like when you're doing things like you want to check and see, like I have this one test I did. I did this one experiment a little while back where I'm putting a painting on a wall, right? I did this little experiment, right? You pick it up and essentially did the same thing where I was just kind of checking to see if is it a wall or not? Like it's a mesh, it's got a collision, and if it was, you know, you can be creative with how you kind of handle this type of thing. That's coming soon. It's going to be a lot of fun, by the way. Okay, so we should be good. Let's just close it. Okay. All right, so let's move on. We're going to get into the message bus stuff. Oh my God, it's already 8. We did start a little bit late, so I'm not too worried. Okay. All right, so you can imagine what's happening in here. We're going to get into this aspect of it right now, which is called custom components. So if you go to the docs and we take a look at our architecture overview, we obviously are familiar with our existing components, right? Our transforms, our shapes, physics and stuff. Well, you can make your own, which is really powerful and important, because I think that this will open up a whole new avenue of interesting stuff. So if you make your own custom component, you'll see some examples in here. You'll see even in the awesome repository some. But what this allows us to do is to create a new type of component that we can add and remove, just like how we did with our on-click, with our transforms and all that stuff, right? So you could build your own kind of business logic and stuff. We'll get into that maybe in the future a little bit. It also has this cool interchangeable aspect of it. So if you have a component, it's a type called an animal, right? But you have both a dog and a cat, but you only want to have one of them essentially per entity. You can kind of do it this way. Maybe it's a little outside of the scope of what we want to talk about. But we have this at the very bottom, which is what we're using, which is components as flags. So what we have in our code, if we look at components, we have a flags thing. So what I'm doing here, and it's a silly way to do it, and I'm willing to bet there's a better way, but what I basically have done is created 3 different components. They're as stupid as can be. In fact, I don't even know if you technically even need a constructor in here, but I have is holdable, is drinkable, and is a dispenser. So the dispenser, it has its transform, it's that. Oh, and look, we're adding this custom component that does absolutely nothing, I think. I'm not even sure it does anything, right? And we have our glass, and we have our is holdable, right? This thing can be held and it can be drunk. And we have our tap, which I don't think it has anything. No, it's just a regular old secret tap. The reason why this is done is if we go to input, what I can do is I know that there's any collision that can happen with any entity with this type of thing, right? It could be a flat surface, but it could be a table, it could be this, it could be that. But like, I might want to make sure that it is like the entity that is is it the dispenser, right? I can just very easily check to see if it has that type of component, then it is that type of object. It's kind of a silly way of doing it, but I just go, hey, does this target have this component? Yeah, all right, you're probably a dispenser then. This will be really handy later when you want to make things holdable, like other things other than a glass, by the way. Like what I can do is build out, let's say instead of beer glass, in the future I wanted to do wine glass, right? And I could like literally just quite honestly just copy and paste this thing. Sorry, you can't see, I'm just doing it fast, sorry guys. But I just want to get a point across, right? Wine glass, all the same properties, I think that's about fine. We'll use that, we'll just use our imagination. It's not a wine glass, but we're gonna call it that. Maybe what I'll do is I'll make it a little bit smaller just so we can see the difference of it. So we have here, we scale. Yeah, I'll make it a little larger. I'm just going to increase the size to maybe 2, 2, 2. It's a little bit of a large little winos. Okay. So I have a wine glass as opposed to beer glass, but I still have is holdable and is drinkable. Game. I can say is add a new cube. And let's say 8, no, 10 by 10. I'm just positioning it, trying to eyeball. And let's say a new wine glass. Look at Typescript and auto-complete it for me. Okay. Let's go back. Oop. Refresh. So what we might be able to do with a little bit more time in future sessions is we'll revisit this type of component because we can make it a lot more powerful. We can say with is holding, maybe we have a whole suite of objects. Maybe we have like on my farm game, we have like we have a shovel, right? We have like we have seed packets, we have water can, right? If I wanted to use the component to, maybe I could write it in a particular way where all I have to do is apply that to each of those entities, and I no longer have to worry about this whole pick up, put down stuff. Maybe it can be abstracted away to a point that people can just add it to their component without a problem. You know, maybe we could add it to a utility library and just say, hey, community, have fun. You can now pick up and put down your objects. So we have this one over here. It's a wine glass. It should be a lot larger. Yep, it's a big one, right? And it's still going to behave exactly the same way. By the way, it's just larger. Cool. I mean, essentially, it would do that anyway. But let's say, where is flags? If I wanted to say is wine glass, right? Wanted to differentiate the two dispensers, for instance, right? I could just say so I just hit tab. It automatically imported it because I auto-completed. It's up there somewhere, right? So now this is wine glass. I might be able to just do some other checks in here. So like maybe there's a different dispenser and it has a different set of animations that it would call if the glass that's there is a wine glass, for instance, right? Maybe I could leverage a lot of this code in interesting ways to kind of just save on time and be able to rapidly develop and just also make it more portable so that other people can use and leverage this stuff. I don't know. That's that aspect of it. All right, now we'll get to the multiplayer stuff because oh my God, look at the time. One cool thing about Decentraland's SDK on the local is I can open this up in yet another tab. We haven't done this before. I don't know if we have or haven't. But I'm in here. I'll wait for the other tab to load. I'll take a second. So this is a really good way of getting familiar with the state inside of Decentraland. All right, so I'm a user. I'm running around. Where's the other guy? Where's my friend? Where are you? It's weird.
As far as
oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah, it sometimes takes a few seconds. Yeah.
Just takes a little while. So what's happened here is I have two browsers running, two tabs, and I have two characters. This one hasn't seen him yet. This is on my local machine. It should be appearing. It's weird. I wonder if this other guy is running. Let's see. That's interesting. All right. Well, you can see me, all right? But let's take a look at something. If I grab this wine glass, right? You can't see it on the other user. They can't see it. If I go and I try to, oh, there you are. It took forever. And I put it on the table. This user can't see it, and that's because just like with web browsers in general, you have your interface where you're clicking on items on any website, And unless somebody explicitly says to send a message to other, like if you're like Google Docs has like a thing where you share the state, you know, you can bounce around, you know, where the cursor is and all that stuff. That's only there because they're sending messages back and forth between you and the other person. That's what needs to kind of happen here. So let's enter into the message bus. We want this beer mug to be visible to all users, at least in this parcel. And if time permitting, we'll show you Colossus. Let's get, oh, this thing is still playing. I'm gonna close it. We don't need it. So let's look at the message bus. About multiplayer scenes. Here we go. So where is this? This is in under advanced multiplayer sync. So all we have to do to kind of to set this type, all you have to do to set this type of thing up essentially is create a sender and a receiver. So if you're familiar with WebSockets, it's pretty common in this type of thing. You see it a lot. If you use Socket.io, we're going to make this message bus. Now, luckily, I think I already kind of started some of this code in this file here called message bus. Ooh, the Zoom thing keeps getting in the way. But we say on event name, and then we have a function that happens. It takes in a bunch of data or any number of bits of data, and then it does something. So the message bus is listening for this event, and then it goes, I got some data. This is what I'm doing with it. The full example is down below, where you have both. You have an on, so when this event happens, take the data. But we also have here emit, where we can at any point in time say scene message bus, emit the name. They have to pair up, right? This is how they are bound together, and then we're passing along this action. We're passing along some data, and that's how this cycle happens. But when we do it through this way, all of the people in the parcel will be updated. So hopefully this will work, because I might have not done this before this session. But let's take a look at what we want. So I think it's kind of smart to break it all out in this way, right? I want to work message bus right now, but in the future, I want this stuff to go to a Colossus server, which I don't know if we'll have time to get to today, but we can always pick that up on the 5th session, which is also our job fair. But here we go. So we have our beer pickup, our beer put down, our beer fill, our beer drink. Okay. So I want to make a function I could put this in the individual items themselves, like the entities for for the beer. But sorry, let me just mute. Sorry, there was a fire truck. Okay, so I want to abstract these away because, as I was mentioning earlier, I want to make it portable. So I'm doing it now, so later it's easy. I have omitting, these are the names that I've decided to have. Beer put down, let me change them. Beer pick up, beer fill, beer drink, beer pick up. So above, I have these functions that I would like any of my entities to call. And then down below, I have a list of essentially on the recipient's end. So I'm just going to kind of keep them all together. I think it's better. I haven't been checking at all to see if there's any messages. Let me just check real quick. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, it looks like there hasn't been any. Okay. Sweet. So we have these guys here. Let's just try it out. I haven't done this, so I don't know how easy it's going to go. So I have my update peer-to-peer beer pickup. And let's go to our entities. Let's go to our class. And let's go to our pickup function. And let's see if this works. I have to pass in this specific beer mug's user ID. I just want to see if a log happens right now. So if we look at what's happening here, it's just going to emit this beer pickup, but then all users that get that are going to just log out these two things, which is value and sender, which are the two properties. I think this guy is going to get it. So go to console. Let's just see it open. Let's clear it. Okay. And let's see if I come over here, pick it up. That was a wine glass. I didn't do it on wine glass, did I? I did it on this one. Oop, oop, oop. Look what happened on the right hand side. So we saw the users, the UUID, the value, which is what I passed. Remember, is that, and the number 6, which Nico, that's the user's ID.
Oh,
So this user
wow.
on the left is number 6.
I have no idea, to be honest. Like as far as I knew, nothing had changed with the message bus. But I mean, I have been away for a week and a half on vacation. Actually, technically, I'm still on vacation till tomorrow. So maybe someone changed something. Like I actually didn't know we had a 667 already released up until today.
Oh wow!
So like it may have been a change on 67.
Okay, so the doc's still a little bit behind, so we're cutting edge here, folks. I think
I'll make sure that if there's anything to update about that,
we got Robert. Robert's gonna help. So we have here.
Yep.
We have.
Yep. Please, if you want to help.
This is the so no, in the past, the documentation basically here is it just takes value and like that's it. All right, it just takes in this stuff. So I guess it's different now, I guess a little bit. So what we have is value and we have sender. And I'm curious, so I want to see if that sender is actually the new user, right? So that one said 6. So pick up, oh wait, if I do it over here now and I pick up one of these.
This by the way doesn't break anything, right? I mean, it's simply a second argument that you can decide not to use, right?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. The docs are different. That's all I know.
Okay.
But hopefully not. So we have that. We have value. Okay. So on the pickup. So let's do something here. So I know this value has my UUID that's being passed through. So I'm just, by doing this, I'm destructuring it. So this is the equivalent. At any point in time, I could just say value.uuid, but that just makes it so now I can just do UUID from now on, which is great, just to get that value. I don't know how familiar everybody is with all of these things. And I'm going to do engine dot entities, which is a list of all the entities. Now I know the UUID, right? So this will get me that entity, which we know is a beer glass, I guess, right? But let's just do this. Is it beer glass equals, now I want to cast, that was the word, cast it. I knew I just needed to wait a minute. So I'm basically saying that is an entity, but it's not just any entity. I'm casting it to be a beer class. And now I can do, oh, I want this to be a lowercase b. We gotta do this right. Beer glass dot pick up, I think. Interesting. This is going to have a different effect, I think, actually. This might be, I don't know how to do this, because it's going to happen on both people. So both people are going to pick up this thing, probably, if I had to guess. I didn't think that thoroughly through. I might just do it on put down, just because I'd have to think it thoroughly through. But both of them, see, this one got an error over here. Cannot read properties of undefined of reading pickup. That's interesting. So they must have different entities. So I guess we do have to kind of do that entity ID thing. Don't like that at all. Interesting. I don't know how to do this. Not off the top of my head. Not in the 10 minutes I have remaining. But essentially, what the thing about the random ID between these two, it's a little bit off. So what we would want to do is hold on to a list of the. Let me just see if I can do it real quick. Actually, I want to do that. I like the map thing a lot, by the way. Let's say. This is how we declare a array, right? We're going to say if this does not exist, which is absolutely the problem, I would say. If it doesn't exist, we're going to create a new beer glass with that name. So we're going to say, no.
I think you'll probably have to change the definition of pure glass class also to take in the UID as an optional argument.
Quickly turning into a avalanche of weird stuff I have to fix. Oh yeah, you're right, 100%. So we'll do that. Beer glass. Let's say up top that takes 2 parameters. I'm gonna say name question mark because it's not necessary, right? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say super. I'm gonna say now if name exists, this is where it gets weird. We're gonna use name. Otherwise, we're gonna do beer glass. This is a string literal, which allows me to put in like I could put a code in the string. So math dot random times 400. Let's also do math dot round. So it's like an actual legit number. Sorry.
Okay, like as a quick way around it, I like the solution.
It's like very quick way.
But that will result in like everyone having different IDs for each beer glass, rather than like the ideal, I guess, would be rather to use a random number to use a sequential number.
But that's okay. That's cool.
Okay,
because then what I can do in here, that'll happen when it first starts. But then what happens in here in this message bus, one, we have to give it a position, which I wasn't passing it along, but I probably should. But pick up, let's just say a new vector 3, let's just say 0, 0, 0. But now we have this this UUID, right? So this one should have that then, right? Else we grab the existing glass, right? And then we just I don't know, just leave it, I guess. Let's just see if this fixes it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I guess like because we call pickup. Pickup's going to happen on every. We have to think this part thoroughly through, and I apologize I didn't get time to do this prior, but this should still do the thing where it. If I click this, right, this other user should get a mug somewhere over here. Parsing commas. Parsing commas cannot read properties of undefined pickup. And that might have been an old log. Let's look at that fresh new one. No. UUID. I'm gonna have to refresh this, folks. And we have to wait. I'm gonna just ask if there are any questions. Just put them in the chat. We are hitting some rough waters right now. We are getting a little bit on time. I do want to have some reserved. We can push this to next week. We can do a little bit of this before the blender, or obviously on the 5th session we can hit it directly and get through it thoroughly. If this doesn't work, I'm just going to show you guys what Colossus is and what you can do with that, which I love Colossus. Let's just see. We have these 2 users in. We have to wait for them to establish a connection, though. Just wait till they appear. Okay, we see each other. Let's just say click. No, we're getting some issues on this one. Yeah, we have to think this thing thoroughly through. I apologize to you folks. But you can do more simple things, I'm sure, with just being able, you're passing it back and forth. It's a peer-to-peer connection where just one user emits something and the other receives it. And if I had prepared this a little bit better, in fact, keep an eye on this repo, because what I can do in upcoming days is I will update that code and I will add it into the repo. So just do a poll. So if you're following along next week, I'll tell you to go ahead and grab it. And you can check the diff and see what I have added. I want to show you guys Colossus real quick. So we did this thing earlier where we ran the server. And during that entire period of time, we saw a bunch of stuff happening here. So joined, left. What is all this? There's all these random letters. It's crazy. What is that? Well, our server that we have in this repository is our Colossus server. Where is it? So let's close some of this. We get a little bit better view. So this is our session 3 repo server. This is our Colossus server. It's sitting in here. This is mostly for development. It really helps to have this going on in here. This is the spelling of Colossus is atrocious, and I hate it, but we're stuck with it. So what Colossus does is it abstracts away a lot of the game matchmaking that exists for a lot of games. So it's not just specific to Decentraland. A lot of other games use this. You can actually probably take a look at some of the other ones that exist. But yeah, it's a lot of developers use it. It's synchronized, flexible, authoritative. So if we're dealing with in Decentraland, the kind of the confusion-y parts, right, of like what we were just dealing with, of trying to get these message bus things to work, it's a little clunky. If we're playing a game of chess and both of us leave and we come back, the chessboard is completely gone, right? Because we're not passing the state back and forth with each other. So when we both leave, we kind of forget what's going on, and we come back and that board is gone. What Colossus does is it's a server that allows you to kind of act as a mediator between the two users. So instead of doing it on the message bus, we send messages in almost the same exact way back and forth to and from Colossus. And what's really good about that, and it's great, is that the server can take those values and say there's a new game form, new chess game, and it can say it's between these two players, and it could store all of the values, like every single move in a database. So if we both leave and we come back, we can have it. It can have easier leaderboards and things along the lines of that, right? And what we have in here is this. That's what this code is. Let's take a look at some of the stuff you'll find in here. The things of relevance, at least, are in your source and index ts. You're told not to mess with this. It will yell at you. Don't touch this file. What you want to do instead is go to your arena.config, and we'll see what I've actually put in here. So when we establish, when a user is established to the Colossus server, they log in or whatever, we have a bunch of different types of games. I have my bar game that I've been working on. It's this game right now, right? There's some monitor, don't worry about it. Let's look at bar games. So you're defining your bar game. So let's say I wanted to have a separate game where people are bartending, but then I also wanted to have a chess game, right? Let's do that. All right. Now rooms, this is where we keep our content, our rooms, or think of rooms as like our game modes. So if you're thinking about old school video games, you have different rooms where people jump in and out. There's like there's multiplayer, like there's a deathmatch, there's like capture the flag, there's like King of the Hill. Those are the types of rooms that you would have for your game, right? So let's just do this, make it a chess game. Let's take a look at bar game. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to pull it into here. Sorry, chess game. Okay, so now I just renamed it so it's not yelling. When a user jumps into this, it's this is the code that happens. It's on create. we have a default state of this game. So let's just say, you know, chess game state. Up here we'll do chess game state. Chess, okay. Copy and paste it. Just kind of like a boilerplate, right? We don't have that file yet, but we'll get it. And we have joined, left, disposing, right? Deposing. Okay. Let's go look at our schemas and let's just see if I can just copy this thing. A duplicate in here. Here there's no duplicate, unless I copy. Oh, yeah, it works. So in here, this is where we would start our default values, right? So in here you might have this is like their hello world. This is what it starts off with. But if you go to Colossus and you look at the documentation, and I think it's on schema. Here we go. We can take a look and see how we declare our Colossus schema. So remember how earlier we had our player state for our multiplayer, and we had our state, like this is holding entity ID, this type of thing, right? This is really useful because when I'm going into this now, maybe we'll go to the bar game state, for instance. I can have a set of players, and I can basically have each player, right? I'm going to do some pseudocode, right? But let's just to get this through, okay? But let's just imagine for a moment. I have a bunch of players, true, and it's like, you know, beer, glass, whatever number, right? This is like pseudocode, okay? But you would basically be building out the schemas, and then you would have players equals, you know, player 1, player 2, right? There would be some state. We would set the schema for something like this right here. You would just kind of go through and say that there's strings, there's numbers, there's booleans. We would structure all of this stuff out ourselves, right? This is a good example of one with height, amount of items, right? We may have, well, you know, I think Colossus is so important. We'll have to do a very separate one. So maybe the first Wednesday in October, we'll go directly to this and just really get through it, because there's so much that can be done here. But you guys have a boilerplate. All the hard work essentially has been done to get the Colossus server connected. If you haven't noticed, if you were playing along, you do have connected. Oop, connection lost now, down on the bottom. And that's mostly because as I've been updating the code for the Colossus server, it disconnected all the users and then reestablished, right? And this version just wasn't smart enough to reconnect. That'll be a feature coming up probably in the future. But if I refresh, it connects to the WebSocket server through our is it init actually technically? Yeah. In Decentraland now, not to confuse if I haven't already, I'm sure. This is the Colossus server setup. Copy and paste this into your own projects. You could probably copy that whole multiplayer directory, just clean on into your project and start playing around. It checks to see if you're in preview mode. This is really important and useful. So on the projects that I have, like I do use this. I have the local server, which is what we have now, which is this thing. But when I push my parcel up to the real world, I want it to point to my server that I have. That is, you know, it's under a secure WebSocket connection, which is important. And I want it to switch between it. So on my local, I can play around, and then I can push to production, and I don't have a problem. Right? As long as I go to the production code and update it, it's cool. There's an entire CI/CD pipeline related to Decentraland that we will have to get to as we build it up to that event. But essentially it. So it's connecting when you run connect, you ask it what room name, and if there's any options. I don't think there really is ever any that we need it. Actually, I think on this instance, I do believe it passes in the realm. Yeah, options realm, and then the user's information. So when the Colossus server receives this, it knows what realm they're in, which is important, and it knows what their what's their user data. So that's all the stuff that is provided from Decentraland. So that's their public key. It might even have the items, the NFTs that they're wearing, and certain stuff like that. Or whatever, there's a certain amount of information that comes from this. If it's in a preview, it'll render out that little is connected thing to let you know. I like to actually remove that and have it always visible, just until I know everything's running when I'm testing on production. And then here, this is it. It tries to connect to that room. This instance, it's bar game. If it does get connected, it will then return the room, which is going to immediately dump out that initial state that we saw. So whatever you declare in your initial state, you're going to get that whole payload. And the best part about this is now every time that the user makes a request, instead of the message bus where it's in JavaScript, it could be tampered with and messed with, what it does, you basically send, hey, I want to pick up that bottle. You tell that server can actually now check against some rules. Can that user pick up that bottle? Like if it's a game of chess, like do you want somebody to pick up pieces when it's not their turn? Well, you can strictly enforce that on the Colossus server. So for chess, I mean, it's not a high stakes game. You could probably get away with that type of thing on the message bus. But if you're playing games of poker, like how we see in the casinos in Decentraland, well, they need a Colossus server or something equivalent. You can build your own WebSocket server, and you can handle all of those things yourself. But Colossus does really take away a lot of the pain of it. So it makes it a lot more manageable, and they also provide a way to scale pretty easily in the future too. So you don't have to really worry about any of that stuff yourself with the arena. I'm going to stop. I'm going to let Nico talk for a little bit. I mean, I should probably got to this little like an hour earlier. Nico, do you want to like kind of let everybody know like what the future state of Decentraland kind of looks like from your perspective and what they can get excited about?
Sure, yeah. Well, I mean, this could easily be another 2-hour talk, but like let's talk about some of the things that I know are coming or that we are going to be directing a lot of like resources to. So one of the big things that's been done, like a lot of the work in the last couple of months has been going towards optimization and trying to get like servers to support more players and be able to render more players at the same time, trying to get the world to feel less empty. And a few other things that have to do with like the ways in which you can interact with other players and how that feels. There's still a long backlog of things that we want to do with that, but like that is one of the main like points that the engineering teams are tackling right now. But we're with regards to the SDK, like we recently put together a team that is focused specifically on the SDK, and that is a team that will be growing. So a lot of things hopefully will be changing and starting to like move a lot faster in regards to adding new features to the SDK itself. One of the biggest things that we see coming in the not so far future, or well, at least we'll have something in the not so far future, is portable experiences. So the idea is that right now, all of the code that you have in a scene is always constrained to like a parcel or a set of parcels. Like it's always like geographically limited to like what is the sphere of influence of this code that you're adding. The idea of portable experiences is to have something you can carry with you. It could be a wearable or it could be something else that has associated script, which can basically run anywhere. And like it allows for having a lot more interesting like emergent kinds of gameplay that don't necessarily need to occur within the constraints of one scene. Like think Jetpack, think a laser tag game that can be played throughout the whole of Decentraland. Think like having some kind of a scavenger hunt or other kinds of things that, are like more social and in between the players and not so much about, the players and the location they're in. That of course opens a whole Pandora's box, right? Because it also enables people to do like things that could involve, cheating in different games. For example, if you have a platformer game where you gotta jump between platforms, a jetpack basically kills the game. So we also gotta be careful about like enabling creators of scenes to, like, at the very least detect when someone is using one of these portable experiences and, make the game not give you a reward or whatever makes sense in that context. So that is one. Sorry, any questions there?
No,
Oh,
sorry.
right, no worries. So that is one of the most like exciting things that will be coming soon. We'll probably have some like early prototypes. Then it's going to be probably a long path until we have this as something that's available for everyone to develop, because we got to figure out what we want to do with this. The DAO also has to weigh in on how we want to work with this, because this is definitely something that the DAO has to weigh on. So when I want to see if we'll have some kind of a committee like we have with wearables, for some subset of experienced, trusted people to check that these portable experiences that are submitted by people don't include anything malicious, for example. But yeah, it absolutely opened the door to really interesting new mechanics that can add new layers into the experience of going to Decentraland. Then like kind of related to this, but also like a lot bigger scope is, as we were talking before, having support for more buttons. I think that this is crucial also for portable experiences, because once you're trying to fly up with a jetpack with E and Fs, but if those same buttons also open doors and stuff, like you're gonna do like you'll be multitasking every time you press a button. So we want to expand the set of keys that you have to work with. Another key thing that I think is super important is having more information about other players in the scene. So having the scene know who else is in the scene, like their ID, their address, etc., their real position, as you see it, not as reported by other players, and also being able to attach an entity to another player. For example, in this scene, you can see that whenever someone picked up a beer glass, like the best we can do is just make the beer glass disappear for anyone else seeing the other player. But the ideal would be for everyone to see that glass at least like floating as if you were in third person. In order to do that, we should be able to somehow attach an entity to a player. So those are like the main things I want to push for in the short term. And I believe that we might have something in regards to all of those in the next couple of months. Like then there's a huge long list. Like I've been working at Decentraland for over 3 years now, and I take note whenever anyone from the community like proposes any feature that we want to add. I have a pretty long list of those already. Some of those are more like realistic in the short term than others. Some of them might bring issues of it might open doors to hacking and things that we don't want, so maybe we don't want some of those. But there's a long list of things that we absolutely do want and we would love to have, like for example lighting, like for example I don't know, having, as I discussed before, custom animations for avatars, like having the ability to like edit the properties of a 3D model so that you can change the material of a 3D model without completely replacing it, or having something attached to a bone within an animated 3D model rather than to the model's position.
That'd be great.
There's a bunch of things that we would love to do, and hopefully, as we now have a more proper SDK team, that also will start moving faster.
With just like you
Yep.
mentioned, by the way, you can do something like you can have a football game where you attach shoulder pads to the user. They collide with each other. There's different.
Yeah.
You can tell what team is on what team. They could throw a ball. You could have a whole game of football, actually probably happening within DCL. You could have like I know there's some soccer games and things that people have, and those are a little bit easier because you're just kind of moving a ball around. But that opens up a whole bunch of interesting stuff. That's just with games. I'm imagining with like
Sure.
some of the social stuff, that'd be a whole bunch, especially more buttons.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that example. Yeah, for sure. Like attaching things to a player allows you to, mark who's on your team and who isn't. That's a crucial thing.
No, you can still do that. I'm sorry. You can still do that with Colossus. So Colossus would allow you to designate teams, and you can do all that business logic off, right? You can send player locations to every user in a faster rate. It's actually sometimes even faster than the peer-to-peer.
But like the delays that the server will have will not match the delays that the Decentraland has, on the other hand, for showing you the positions of other players. And so like if you want to show something like a floating marker on top of a player, that marker won't always match with the avatar you're seeing. Even if Colossus is, faster at sending these messages, like what you also want is clarity, right? You want to have consistency between the player, the avatar you see, and this thing that's on it.
That's a good point. It's very exciting stuff.
Yeah. So one disclaimer that I think is important to make is that, so I work in the Decentraland Foundation. So the Decentraland is, by nature, a decentralized project. And the idea is that like the Decentraland Foundation is one more contributor to this whole platform. Pull requests are encouraged. If anyone wants to, dabble in the SDK code, the door is open. If you want to make a PR, that can by all means happen.
Is there any low-hanging fruit for people that want to jump in and get into like contributing code? Is there any, like, sometimes in certain repositories, like there's just, these are easy tickets, like, or issues or something that or people can just grab?
That would sure be nice. I should discuss this with the rest of the team. But it would be great to be able to share a list of like little things like that. Yeah, I like the idea.
I'm just going to drink a lot of beer. Okay. We'll leave it open. I know it's a really long session. Some people probably have dropped out because it's like almost 9 o'clock at night here. The future sessions hopefully will not be this long, or we'll break them into smaller pieces. Does anyone have any questions while Nico's on? We can actually maybe stop the recording and then we can turn the mics on for those that are remaining.
Sure. But by the way, I do plan on attending the next few sessions as well. So,
perfect. Yeah. Excellent.